Hello, this is Conan Soups and welcome back to another Lumion Legacy HTUC video, and today's HTUC video is on Dokumori. Other than its name, Dokumori seems to be a pretty interesting Lumion in the PvP metagame, as it has a very specific niche that not many actually has. So let's talk about Dokumori. From the counters and checks, as well as the teammates to know in when you're using Dokumori in your matches, as well as knowing the sets and the roles that Dokumori can actually be playing in your teams, today's video is going to be all about how to use and counter Dokumori. So the role that Dokumori is going to be an essential question to ask, but we can answer this with its base stats, and all things considered, its base stats are pretty bad. Its range attack and range defense stats are really bad here. You are very prone to range attacking hits with this range defense stat, and your speed stat of 59 is able to outspeed stuff like Senomars and Himber, but when it comes to actual offensive Lumions, you're not outspeeding those, and of course, some meta wall strats as Stratosaur, Pyrolin, Obsidian, they're all going to be outspeeding you. So Dokumori is going to be taking hits every time it's on the battlefield most likely, but it does have a decent HP stat to boot. 88 HP, that is nothing to scoff at, and for a melee defensive focused Lumion, it's not that bad either. 96 melee defense is not the highest thing in the world, but this does help alleviate some of the range attacking pressure that Dokumori has. But the main thing you want to know here is that it has a decent melee attack stat of 101. It's not the best thing in the world, but it does help Dokumori out a little bit, as Dokumori is not going to be tanking hits unless it's invested into. And for its energy stat of 101 as well, this does let Dokumori throw off a lot of utility based moves a lot, Icicle Traps being one of them, and Baffle as well, so it can play a supportive role on your team. And it even is more compounded to the fact where its defensive typing has some somewhat useful resistances. It only actually has 2 resistances to Toxic and Brawler, weirdly enough, which Toxic being 1/4, and an immunity to Electric. Electric immunities are always greatly valued in this metagame, being able to stop momentum with from Zip Zap from Lumions like Zulong, Ikazune, Deladrix, Phasenaut, all of the above basically. It's really good for them. And of course, your Brawler resistance, it's not as common, but you do have to watch out for Lumions such as Ursul and Barbadger carrying those, so you can swap in if you do need to play around those two. And Toxic types here, they're not really common, but you can try and swap in on other opposing Dokumoris and stuff like that. But you do have 4 weaknesses, all 4 of which are being very common in this metagame. Mind types, you have the Casimir forms, Ferroglyph, Shachi, and Metatoad, so good luck trying to be able to deal with those 4. And for the water weakness, it's mainly Luminami, Barblast, Deladrix, all the water types in the metagame that has released from part 2. There's just going to be a lot that Dokumori has to deal with. Earth types, they're not as common as before, but you do have to watch out for the occasional Borak and Tyrex on most teams. And for ice types, they're not as common as well, but you do have to watch out for Icicle Traps and the occasional Wintrix and Himbers that you're going to be finding on most other teams. So what role will Dokumori be playing? Well, it's going to be a somewhat decent wall on the melee defense side and on the range defense side, which I'll get to in a bit, and it's still prone to range hits and being revenge killed, so pairing Dokumori up with defensive range tanks that can take hits from Dokumori's super effective weaknesses, those will be pretty good defensive teammates for Dokumori. So with that out of the way, let's get to the set of Dokumori. So for Dokumori's set, we're going to be utilizing the ability Spine Break with a melee defense focus set. For those who don't know, Spine Break is a ability that procs when you get hit by a melee contact move, and it will spread poison barbs to the opposing side of the team. This is pretty great because poison barbs here is still pretty oppressive if the opponent doesn't have a toxic type, and you being earth type of course makes that even better. Spine Break with poison barbs works exactly as poison barbs is. One layer is non-toxic poison and the second layer is a toxic poison where the poison damage increases exponentially, I'm pretty sure. And for the toxic layer, it's just the same damage over time. And for your personality, of course, we're running very robust, clumsy, sluggish. This is so we can maximize our ability to take hits from the melee side, and of course, check stuff like Vesperatsu and Your Soul with our melee defense. And of course, our moveset will be Aqua Jaws, Baffle, Earthquake, and Ice Cold Trap. Ice Cold Trap is mainly here for double hazards on the field and just for overall utility. This will also help stop mainly plant types from swapping in on us and getting some free setup, which is always nice. And Baffle here is so we can support offensive variant teams that would appreciate the Ice Cold Traps and Poison Barbs. And Aqua Jaws and Earthquake. Aqua Jaws is mainly so we don't get walled by other earth types, and of course so we can stop Lumines from actually setting up on us. And for Earthquake, it's mainly so we can stop toxic types from getting or from walling us. But overall, if you want to replace one of these moves for Baneful Bash, so plant types aren't always a free swap in when Ice Cold Traps aren't on the field, then go right on ahead. But our item of choice will be Health Amulet because we have no recovery. And of course, our moveset here, or the TPs actually, 72 melee attack is technically leftovers, but this does let you 3-hit KO a non-robust Gargolem defense with Aqua Jaws, so that is still pretty nice to have. And of course, 200 HP in melee defense there to max out those stats out. And 28 energy is mainly so we can use 1 Ice Cold Trap, 2 Aqua Jaws, and a mixture of 3 Baffles and Earthquakes. And now, like I said, onto the range defense set, we're going to be utilizing the ability Water Absorb. This may seem niche, and it technically is niche, but Dokumori as a range defense Lumion will be able to wall Lumions such as Deldrix and Ikuzune indefinitely. Deldrix cannot pivot out, so it's forced to swap out, and that's a free Baffle for you because Zip Zap you are immune to, and everything else you are resisting besides Jetstream and Ferroblast. So that is honestly a really good niche for Water Absorb Dokumori. Of course, our personality will be very clever. It's just a very robust personality. Moveset is going to be the same here, and of course the TPs are swapped from the melee defense to the range defense. And honestly, the range defense Dokumori kind of seems pretty cool to try out if you are that scared of Deldrix, so yeah. With that out of the way, let's talk about Dokumori's counters and checks, and of course, Dokumori's teammates. So offensive counters and checks mainly comprise of range attacking Lumions that can actually take advantage of Dokumori's lack of range defense recovery. But first off, toxic types are going to be your main way of answering Spine Breaker. These are some of the 4 common toxic types that you can use, and of course, range attacking Lumions such as the Mind types like Metatoad, Shachi, Ferroglyph, and Cosmere Cracked. All 4 of these Mind types are able to take advantage of Dokumori and not proc Spine Breaker. Range Earth types or non-contact Earth type users such as Borak and Baneki are also good. Eruptodon Soul Burst is also good against Dokumori because you do have enough bulk to withstand earthquakes, and of course you do have Landslide to hit it super effectively, and you have the ice types such as Wintrix that can take advantage of Dokumori as well. It also does have Provoke, so it can stop Dokumori from pivoting out with Baffle, setting up Ice Cold Traps, stuff like that. So Wintrix is also a pretty good solid offensive check to Dokumori. And as for offensive teammates, defensive teammates aren't really something to mention here, mainly because Dokumori kind of exists on its own, and it doesn't really wall enough to actually make a solid defensive core, because whatever Dokumori is on a defensive core, another Lumion does it better, which is kind of sad. But offensive teammates to take advantage of Spine Breaker as follows are Dusket. Secret ability Dusket is really great because it will take advantage of Spine Breaker's poison and be able to get what 50% damage off, I'm pretty sure, so that's honestly really great for Dusket. It also does have certain pretty good matchups against some toxic types as well, so Dokumori Dusket seems to be the Lumion you want to go here. And of course, your regular hyper offense Lumions Shachi is the same reason as Dusket, besides the secret ability that actually works well with its hazards. But Shachi, being a mine type, it stops toxic types from swapping in, or once they do swap in, Shachi gets free damage. Eruptodon, Tatab, Zulong, they're all pretty good Lumines that can be used on Hyper Offense, and I should have mentioned this now, but using screens such as the Cleone screens, which is basically enchantments. Cleone is also good if you want to try and build Hyper Offense teams with this Lumion. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the conclusion and my thoughts on this Lumion. So overall, Dokomori seems to be a pretty niche Lumion. Like discluding the water absorb ability, which is honestly really funny that water absorb is going to be the best Deladrix answer now, which in case you hate that Lumion, then of course use water absorb Dokomori. But let's talk about its main viability here, Spine Breaker and its melee defense set. Dokomori doesn't really apply anything else other than Spine Breaker, but Spine Breaker on paper doesn't also seem great either, because toxic types are still going to be used. You have opposing Dokomoris, you have Venolin, you have Barblast and Halvantic. There's just going to be a lot of toxic types that are going to be able to swap in on like once Dokomori is off the field. And if it did put off any other type of hazards like icicle traps or barbs, then I'd consider Dokomori's like ability to be really strong. But because of how common that there's gonna be toxic types on all teams now because of Dokomori, its Spine Breaker ability won't be more of use. But who knows? Maybe Dokomori is going to be really good, and maybe the meta, from what I haven't analyzed yet, really hates toxic types, so maybe Dokomori's Spine Breaker will be really good. But if you found something informational or you liked the video in general, make sure you like the video and subscribe for other videos. I'm going to be doing more Atlantean City Part 2 content, like finishing the Soul Bursts, and of course, doing guides for the other Lumions, so stay tuned. This is Conan Stoops signing off to remind you that Zulong is still a dumpster fire.